Middle East has descended into a huge diplomatic row. Four Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain and the UAE, have severed diplomatic ties with Qatar. And while Saudi Arabia and Bahrain have also closed their borders with the country. Now, they accuse Doha of supporting terrorism and interfering in the internal affairs of Arab states.
In order to protect our national security from the threat of terrorism and extremism, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has decided to sever diplomatic ties with Qatar.
The government of Egypt has decided to cut diplomatic ties with Qatar towards Egypt, and the failure of all attempts to discourage Qatar from supporting terrorist organizations.
Due to Qatar's persistent attempts to destabilize security in Bahrain and interfere in our internal affairs, and due to media incitement and support for armed terrorist activities and the financing of groups associated with Iran, the government of Bahrain has severed diplomatic relations with Doha.
Saudi Arabia, via its state-run press agency, said that it has pulled all Qatari troops from the ongoing war in Yemen, with accusations that Doha supports al-Qaeda and Islamic State terrorist groups. The statement was timed with a previous announcement by Bahrain, and the countries are halting air and sea traffic to the country. Egypt also announced the closure of its airspace and seaports for all Qatari transportation to protect its national security, the Foreign Ministry said in its own statement. Etihad Airways, the UAE's flag carrier, said it would suspend flights to and from Qatar beginning Tuesday morning. Qatar hosts the U.S. military's Central Command and some 10,000 U.S. troops, with American forces using its air base. The Associated Press said there was no immediate response from the Pentagon on the situation, and there was also no immediate response to the accusations available from Doha, according to Al Jazeera.
The spat comes after Qatar's state-run news agency was reportedly hacked. And following the breach, comments attributed to Qatar's emir were published, in which the country's leader expressed support for Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah and Israel. He also suggested US President Donald Trump may not last long in power. Well, Qatar's government denied the comments were made and branded the entire story as fake news. Well, let's discuss this further now. We can cross live to Middle East analyst Marwa Osman joining us here on RT International. Good to see you today, Marwa. Qatar is being accused of supporting terrorist groups and destabilizing the region. Now, what's behind these accusations? I suppose, why are they only surfacing now?
Well, they started surfacing to begin with in 2011. We'll talk more about that, but I think that people who are harboring terrorism are now accusing other people who are also harboring terrorism of harboring terrorism. That should be a punchline of a very serious joke, but it's not. It's very risky. It's very challenging for the entire region. And I think we started really feeling the heat between both Qatar and Saudi Arabia since 3 months ago, when the affiliates that are being funded by both states started bickering and fighting and killing each other in Syria. That was the first mark that started that drop or war of words between them, which concluded in what happened today. But what surfaced to begin with at the beginning of the so-called Arab uprisings and Arab Spring in 2011 had historical background. I mean, it did show that they are challenging one another since the 2011 uprisings to take control of the MENA region, who funds which group in which state, starting from Tunisia, ending off in Syria, but passing through Libya, obviously. But it all started in the 1950s. The main bickering for Saudi Arabia and Qatar started with the Saudi support for the Muslim Brotherhood, before now being, and started from the Gulf War, being enemies.
All right, Marwa, I'm so sorry, Marwa. I've got to jump in. Marwa, I'm really sorry. I do apologize. I've got to jump in. My time is so short here. I can't go that far back. I've got to bring you back to the center here, because these are this whole called fake news story. Qatar is saying that the comments supposedly by the emir, the comments are fake and that it was hacked, and then this hacked story was sent out. The thing is, though, we've seen this huge diplomatic spat erupt in the region. The entire rest of the Middle East, or certainly most of them, seem to be taking this story seriously. Qatar says it's a fake news story. The comments are not true. Where does the truth lie in this?
It doesn't matter whether it's a fake story or not. What matters is that the leaks that came after such a fake news story, whether it is fake or not, the leaks are very dangerous. We saw leaks of the UAE ambassador at the US, Yusuf Al-Atabib, saying a lot of things that are very risky for everyone in the Middle East, especially with a certain NGO called the FDD, that is an NGO that is an Israeli-funded one, which worked with the UAE and Saudi Arabia to demonize and challenge the image of Qatar in the Middle East. So if this is the beginning of the leaks, then just I could ask you, what about the other leaks that could actually involve Saudi emirs and Saudi princes in what's going on in the Middle East, especially in harboring terrorism? This is a huge risk. Now, the fake news part, whether it is true or not, because at the same day, I mean, 3 hours after the tweets that were released, we had a statement coming from Qatar government, from the Qatari officials, saying that this was a fake news, we were hacked, etc., etc. But even if they were hacked, the media, the GCC media, especially the Saudi and UAE media, did not even wait. They were just standing at the tip of the toes waiting for something like this to happen, and they started a media war, a frenzy that is unending.
Something is brewing here. Something is, indeed, something is brewing here. Because now some are already saying there's some sort of scapegoating going on, potentially. Saudi Arabia has been repeatedly accused of sponsoring terrorism alongside Qatar. Is this a bid to shift the focus to Doha, do you think? Because the WikiLeaks in 2014 leaked Hillary Clinton's emails where she said both Qatar and Riyadh are supporting ISIL.
Are harboring terrorism, yes, but the evidence, to back this with more evidence, you could look at the terrorism report that was banned from being released in the UK just yesterday, because it spoke directly against Saudi Arabia and pinpointed Saudi Arabia to be funding and supporting force for terrorism in the Middle East and elsewhere. That is one of the evidences. Yes, they are trying to pinpoint Qatar as being the sole terrorist harboring nation in the Middle East, but that's not true. I heard today, I saw a tweet by a Saudi official actually accusing Qatar of helping Houthis in Yemen. And just yesterday morning, 3 or 4 Qatari soldiers were killed on the borderline with Yemen by Houthis. I mean, that doesn't add up. And even if they try to do so, I think the major link between Saudi Arabia and what's going on versus what's going on in Qatar, I mean, media-wise, is what has been happening for the past 2 years. Saudi Arabia has been openly trying to normalize and trying to release the Palestinian cause from its real intentions. They are trying to give Israel its legitimacy, if you will, in the Middle East. Qatar is still funding Hamas, which Saudi Arabia is against, and at the same time, Qatar is refusing to cut its ties with Iran. Cutting ties with Iran means at the same time being part of what Saudi Arabia is harboring in the Middle East, and they refuse to do so because they do have strategic goals with Iran to begin with, and Saudi Arabia doesn't like that because, let's face it, they say it's Iran that's meddling in. And we did also see that from Saudi officials just this morning, saying that, look, Qatar is the son of Iran, and Iran is trying again to meddle in. It's just so complicated, yet it's very clear what's happening here. Either you follow us, either you are part of the GCC, or you will be out, and we will all cut our ties with you, cut our diplomatic ties, and even maybe stop the economy. They can go further on and to create some sort of an uprising to try to overthrow the government and the emir.
Well, it seems, Marwa, that the spat is only now just getting underway, so we'll see how the next 24, 48 hours do unfold. A Middle East analyst, Marwa Osman, thank you very much for joining us here on RT today. Appreciate it.